Hi, I'm Greta,
Hi, I'm Millie,
and you're listening to the Books We Meet in the Library.
a bookish podcast about reading and the book community.
Millie, what are you currently reading?
So, I'm currently reading A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas because I am still on that ACOTAR trilogy reread and I'm enjoying
How's
it
that
so
going?
much.
It's
It's
going
so
well.
it's so great. I got to chapter 55 again and it was just as spectacular as before. And I am now in the third book.
Okay.
And the beginning of the third book is Feyre just being a manipulative spy bitch, and I love the vibes. I'm so here for it.
I love that. I'm so happy that you're going back and rereading these books. You know, when I first started reading again, I thought I've always found it rereading weird, like going back and rereading a book weird, but that's because I used to think of books as like a task or like an assignment. But now rereading like a favorite book or a series is literally the equivalent of going back and like having like a comfort show. It's
Hmm.
so nice and lovely. I absolutely love it.
And like Sarah J. Maas books are my comfort read.
There you
Like
go. So it's perfect.
it's the perfect like level.
That's so nice.
Okay,
That's so
what are
nice.
you reading?
I am finishing up Sula by Toni Morrison. I have like 80-ish pages left. I am really excited to finally be done with it. Well, not like because I'm like waiting for it to be over, just because I've gotten to like a very pivotal point in the story and a lot of things are about to like unravel. And I'm just really happy to have finished or being close to finishing my first Toni Morrison. And I also read, well, I'm not really reading it because I finished it yesterday, but Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Huang. It is a horror, yeah, sure, we can call it a horror story, very similar to Rouge by Bona Awad. Talks about very similar like things relating to beauty and relating to like inaccessibility to certain spaces. So I really enjoyed it. I liked it more than Rouge. So yeah, it was good.
Ooh. Okay, so I think that there's one booktuber out there that surprisingly has both of our reading taste demographics. And that
Ooh,
is Kayla from Books and Lala because she's like a
okay.
really big booktuber. I started watching her content because I loved how creative she was with her video ideas, and she was definitely like always having like original new fresh ideas with like super high
Okay.
quality. And
Mhm.
so I loved watching her for that reason, even though none of the books that she read or that she really like were her favorites were like things that I liked. But
Mhm.
now I'm starting to shift and like a little bit of her books, but her taste
Ooh.
is 100% your stuff. She loves Monstrilio, she loves Bunny, she loves let's see what else that you like that's creepy. Like basically a lot of the books that you have mentioned that you have been reading recently, she's mentioned on her channel.
Oh, fun. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna need to check this channel out then.
Hmm.
I'm always looking for like new YouTubers to watch. I really watch like the same ones over and over and over again. I
Hmm.
love Jack Edwards. I love Newly Nova. I love
Mm.
her content as well. We don't have a similar taste at all. But I like how broad and like reads a little bit of everything, and I appreciate that a lot. And then there's another one that I recently started following. I can't remember, but yeah, I really like their stuff. So I'm always
Yeah.
looking for something else. I need something else to keep me company while I'm having dinner. So
Yeah, and she one of the other like subgenres that she likes is like cozy unhinged mysteries, and that's
oh,
where I
that's
got a
you.
lot. Exactly, that's where I got a lot of my recommendations because she loves Everyone on this Train is a Suspect, and
Oh
like
God,
because she was talking about it so much, I picked it up because of her, and then she reads other books that are like in the same realm of
that's
like
fun.
unhinged mysteries that I would love because of
That's fun.
unnecessary dramaticness. So
Oh, that's
yeah.
really fun. That's fun. That's fun. Okay, cool. Then I will have to check out. This is Books and Lala.
Hmm.
Okay, perfect. Well, speaking of rereads, that's a perfect segue into the book we're
Hmm.
reading today. I'm so excited to the book we're going to be reading today. I'll go ahead and introduce it. It's Monstrilio by Gerardo Samona Córdova, and this is my favorite book from last year. I actually didn't reread it this time because I don't know. I wanted to go. I haven't discussed it much with anybody else besides for my very good friend Cynthia, who was featured on a podcast episode here, but also like got me into this book. And so I still wanted to go in with like fresh eyes, even though I read this last year. I felt like that would be the best way to go about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really excited to talk about it today with you, Millie. I'm so nervous, but I'm so excited.
Okay, so this is our first time that we're going to be talking about the book and sharing both of our thoughts. Well, I already know your thoughts. I already know it's your favorite book. I
Yes.
know that like it's your bread and butter. When I
Yeah.
was reading this book, I was like, "Oh, this is 1000% sugar coated." Like I understand fully why you love this book. I understand why it's your favorite book. I understand why you recommended it. So but this is our first time where we get to
I'm
share
so
my
nervous.
thoughts about it and my opinions on it. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I'm so nervous. So, I mean, for those who don't know, or probably maybe do know, Millie is indeed a mother. Millie is a mother. I am not a mother. I am a dog mom. Okay. So I wanted, and my friend is also not a parent. So I thought it would be interesting to get Millie's POV on this as a new mother. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm so nervous, but I'm so excited to go into this. Really? You can take it away. I'll stop talking. I'll stop blabbing.
Okay, so we're gonna do a spoiler cover to cover review, and so we're going to figure out what our star ratings are. So we're going to be using the CallPal rating system that is hosted by G from Book Roast. So it is 7 different categories. We have character, atmosphere, writing, plot, intrigue, logic, and enjoyment. We rate it from 1 through 10, and then average out the rating to get our star rating. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it. Okay. First category is character. Greta, what did you put for character?
I gave character a 9 out of 10.
Okay, I gave character a 10 out of 10.
There's only one character that I don't like, and we can talk about what character that is. And I'm pretty
Oh,
sure we have the same character.
there's a character that I hate with a fiery passion. I haven't hated a character this much in so long, but because the author did such a good job of making me hate the character subconsciously
Yes.
while
Yes.
still being sympathetic towards them,
Yes.
it's a
Yes.
10.
Okay.
It's a
We're
10.
gonna. Okay. Perfect. Perfect.
So Greta, for atmosphere, what did you give?
I gave it a 10 out of 10.
I gave it a 9 out of 10.
Okay.
Okay. For writing, what did you give it?
I gave it a 10 out of 10.
For writing, I gave it a 9 out of 10.
Okay.
All right. For plot, what did you give it?
I gave it a 10 out of 10.
Okay. I gave it a 7 out of 10.
Okay.
All right. For intrigue, what did you give it?
I gave it a 10 out of 10.
I gave it a 7.
Okay. Not too bad.
All right. For
I'm like,
logic,
not too bad. I'm like, that's not too
yeah.
bad. The rating isn't too bad. Okay. For
For
logic, I gave it
logic.
a 9 out of 10.
Okay. For logic, I gave it a 7 out of 10.
Okay.
And then last but not least, for enjoyment.
For enjoyment, I gave it a 10 out of 10. I loved it.
Enjoyment, I was torn between a 7 and an 8. But I think I'm
Okay.
going to give it an 8.
Okay. I'm like doing my math right now. I totally forgot to get my average.
I know. I'm doing the
2,
app on my
5.
calculator right now.
I know.
We're so prepared.
I know. Oh my God. Okay. So my average is a 9.7, which is a solid 5-star.
Mine is a 8.14, which is a solid 4-star.
And you know what? I will take it. I will take it. I am so relieved right now.
That I didn't hate the book completely.
I'm so relieved that you didn't hate the book entirely. So I knew you weren't going to hate it because like just matter of fact, this is a really good book. The story is very captivating. The writing is incredible. The way that the book is structured is amazing. It's just arguably, it's a classic story. So I was like, it's tried and true. I was like, I know Millie's not going to hate the book, but it's really just like the subject matter and how kooky and crazy the book is that I was like concerned about.
Okay, so I had such a hard time reading this book
Okay.
because I there was like a lot of things that I really enjoyed about the book and
Okay.
simultaneously a lot of things that like bothered me. And so
Okay.
that's where it was just like it felt conflicting of like how I felt by the
Yes.
end of it. So I
Yes.
we have a lot to discuss with this.
Yes, it is a very like there are subject matters in this book that are not for everybody.
Mhm.
So, content warnings, would you like to take it away?
Yes. All right. So, content warnings we have death of a child, body gore, animal death, violence, injury, and graphic sexual content.
Mhm.
All right. Currently on Goodreads, it's sitting at a 4.12, which I think is a really good rating for it. I think that is probably where it lands.
All right, and now for the Goodreads reading synopsis. I think 4.12 is a pretty solid rating. Maybe like a 4.5 and I would be content, whatever. But it's very, very good. I like that. It's solid. It averages us out, which is,
Mhm.
where we kind of want to be. All right, Goodreads reading synopsis. Grieving mother Magos cut out a piece of her deceased 11-year-old son Santiago's lung. Acting on fierce maternal instinct and the dubious logic of an old folk tale, she nurtured the lung until it gained sentience, growing into the carnivorous little Monstrilio she keeps hidden within the walls of her family's decaying Mexico City estate. Eventually, Monstrilio begins to resemble the Santiago he once was. But his innate impulse, though curbed by his biological and chosen family's communal care, threatens to destroy this fragile second chance at life. A thought provoking meditation on grief, acceptance, and the monstrous side of love and loyalty, Gerardo Sámano Córdova's blends bold imagination and evocative prose with deep emotional rigor, told in four parts that span the globe from Brooklyn to Berlin. Monstrilio offers, with uncanny clarity, a cathartic and precise portrait of being a human. I love this synopsis. I think it does a really good job at kind of explaining what you're getting into without
Mhm.
spoiling everything.
I also think this is one of the best synopsis readings you've done.
Thank you. It's because I love this book. I was like, I'm going to take my time. I'm not going to rush. I am going to hit it in one go. It's
Mhm.
such a good book. I'm so
Oh my
excited
god.
to discuss. So,
Yay.
I mean, did you read the synopsis before going into the book?
I did because I
Okay.
knew nothing about this book. Like I had
Okay.
like I thought it was a creature romance. Like yeah,
Okay.
right,
I mean,
right.
it is very romantic.
It is, but like I guess I was thinking more of like not okay.
Frankenstein or like
No, like
Dracula.
Ice Planet Barbarians. Like I was thinking of like n-
I
let me
mean, a
explain
little bit at the
myself.
end,
Let me
but
explain myself. I was thinking that it was like a creature romance, not like a
okay.
creature horror in that
Oh,
regards.
okay,
So
okay,
it
okay,
was
okay.
like, is it between like a human and a creature that they fall in love? Like I was thinking along that realms. And
Oh,
then the
okay.
synopsis was kind of clearing it up, being like, oh, it's not a creature romance, but it's like a literary fiction with horror elements to it. So
Yes. Yes. Okay. That's so funny. I'm really happy that you got that cleared.
yes,
You would have been
before
very
before jumping
confused.
into it.
You would have
And
been very confused going into it.
okay, honestly, the fact that this book is split up into four even parts with four different POVs really helped me in terms of reading it because I read it chunk at a time. I
Mhm.
was able to kind of like decipher what I was feeling before moving on to the next part. And it also makes it really easy for us to break down the synopsis for this.
It's perfect. The way that this book is written, I didn't know the style at which it was written going into it.
Mhm.
And I didn't know it while I was reading it, I didn't know if we were gonna go back to other POVs. So it gave me a sense of like I was clinging on to the POVs that I liked and I didn't want
Mhm.
them to end. And I was like, are we gonna go back? Am I not going to get this POV again? Like, is this person just gone from my reading journey? So it just gives you this like sense of like grasping for each of these characters that I absolutely adored. Oh my god. I'm so excited.
All right. So the first part is Mago's point of view, and Magos is the mom of the story. All right. So the story starts off with one of the most brutal opening scenes I think I've ever read in a book. So
Yeah.
Magos and her husband Joseph are mourning the loss of their 11-year-old son Santiago. They're literally like both in the bed with him because he's passed away throughout the night. And Santiago was born with a rare condition where he only had one lung. And so he was not supposed to survive past 1 day, but he made it all the way to 11 years old. So, overcome with grief, Magos cuts open her deceased child and takes a small part of his lung. Over the next 3 months, Magos and Joseph are in deep states of grief. Magos turns into a ghost and is haunting Joseph in anger. Joseph goes deeper into depression and no longer gets out of bed. Magos leaves her husband and New York and returns back to her childhood home in Mexico City. She's greeted by her best friend Lena, who takes her home to see her mother. At home, Magos has a conversation with the family housemaid Jackie and shows her Santiago's lung. Jackie tells her an old family legend of her grandmother's cousin who stole the heart of a deceased girl and fed it to try and create her own daughter. Instead, a young, handsome man was created who became her lover. After finally giving birth to a daughter, the couple was killed by jealous neighbors. Magos starts to feed the lung in secret. Magos' mother holds a mass and funeral for Santiago, which Magos is forced to attend. Joseph won't attend, and he's still mad at Magos that she left him, and also that he destroyed their son when she cut him open. At the funeral in Magos' home, Magos and Lena are talking when they hear a noise in the closet. Thinking it's a mouse, Magos goes to catch the creature when she realizes it's the lung come to life. Magos continues to feed the lung and it grows into a creature. She tries to keep it a secret. When it grows big enough, it attacks the family dog and Jackie discovers his existence. Magos convinces Joseph to come and visit. She tries to get him to agree to a second chance at their family with the creature, but Joseph is disgusted. As they are arguing, the creature escapes and attacks Magos' mother. Everyone wakes up and tries to kill the creature. Joseph manages to smash it with a hammer. Magos runs away with the creature until Lena finds her in the middle of the night in a park. Okay, we got a lot to talk about. I'm gonna
Okay.
let you go first. Go, handle it.
Okay. So she said, handle it, figure it out. So whenever I was first reading this section, obviously this book starts with a bang. Like the way that this book is set up is literally heart-wrenching. You feel it starts off in New York. They're like in upstate New York, and the reason why they live there is because apparently this is like the best place for Santiago to be. In order to give Santiago like the best chance at life with his one lung, this is like the optimal, conditions for him. Um, and so they have this like beautiful home, and we quickly go into just Magos and Santiago's kind of spiral into depression. And it is such a good depiction of depression in a book. Also, the way that Magos grieves Santiago's passing by literally carving out his lung is so, there's something so primal about that, and there's something so like desperate. It's an act of desperation of trying to hold on, and there's something so like, oh, what's the word, primal, and then just I already said that, like cathartic, and I don't know, human about that. Like, we are, as humans, you're told to kind of compose yourself in the presence of grief, and I can't imagine what it must be like to lose a child. But I can only imagine that it feels something similar to this, you know, um, willing to do absolutely anything to hang on to it. This was a large part of why I wanted to read, why I wanted you to read this book, and why I felt like your experience with this book would be different.
So
Um,
what I'm hearing is that
Millie,
you're trying to trigger me, is what I'm hearing.
no, no, not at all. I just wanted to know, Millie, is being a parent, like, does it change you in this way? Where would you
Oh,
carve out the lung of your child? Should you keep some memory of him?
okay. Probably, yeah, because
Yeah,
yeah, it
that's
like
what it feels. Yeah.
your entire brain chemistry changes when you have a kid, which I
Yeah.
was always told that until I experienced it myself. Because I remember just like being who I typically was, and then all of a sudden a kid popped out of me, and it was like a switch, like an
Okay.
automatic switch. And I remember the first couple of days I was pretty feral. And I was just
That
like,
mhm,
nobody touches my kid. Like, I had to be around him 24/7. I was like, I have to protect him. I have to keep him alive, because you have the fear that like when there's such a tiny infant that like any single thing can just knock him out.
mhm,
And I just remember like the first week, I couldn't sleep like at all throughout the night, because I was so worried that he would just like stop breathing in the middle of the night. And so I would sleep by his crib, but I would just be watching him for like a week straight. And then I'd have to like nap during the daytime because of sleep deprivation.
yeah.
So yeah, I completely understand where this maternal figure is coming from. And I think that that was part of the reason why I thought the character work for this was so damn good, because I hated Magos with a fiery passion. I hated this character so much because of just all the stuff she did throughout the book. But at the same time, it's like I felt so sympathetic towards her because I know where she's coming from, and I know that like the grief is exacerbating all of her bad behavior that she does in this book. Um but yeah, it was I was not prepared for this book. When I read the first chapter, I was like thrown back because I was just like, it was so sad and graphic, but not like bad graphic, just like raw. It just felt
Yes.
really raw.
Yes. Yes.
And it was definitely like you instantly got into the place of like what this book was going to be about. um and also just like the entire time that she's like trying to grow this lung, trying to feed this creature. And I really like that we had Jackie, who explained kind of like the folklore behind it, like the
Mhm.
story behind it,
Mhm.
because I was like, oh, we got some foreshadowing here, right? Because we have a character who did this, and created this creature, and she got everything she wanted, but in the end it didn't turn out the way she expected. And I was like, oh, we getting some foreshadowing here. So I really really like that part. And yeah, I do like this part of the book just because I felt like it really introduced us to the elements of it, to the atmosphere, to the character work. The writing was really good. um but more thoughts will come for the next parts.
Okay. Yeah, no, I as a character, I felt like Magos was the representation of a very, I think the word you used, feral, is incredibly important. It's a very feral, very animalistic behavior when faced with, this immense all-encompassing grief that she has to deal with. I loved the setting of it. I love that it took place in Mexico City, because listen, there's just a thing. There's a thing about Central and Latin American countries. We have such a rich like folklore, and there's such rich like stories and tales, and like the mysticism that takes place in these countries is so interesting and so nuanced, and a lot of the time it deals with these like creatures and monsters and very much like I want to I want to say cardinal, I guess. Cardinal,
Mhm.
there's a lot of gore, and there's a lot of uh blood and just body part. Like it's very much it fits the book's topics, and I think that it's just it the setup is incredible. You are instantly thrusted into this world, and you're like, okay, I have no idea where this is going. I also loved the character of Jackie. I loved how much of like a siren Jackie is. In like Jackie is like the character that's like, be warned, of what you're doing is going to have repercussions, learn from people before you. And then
There has to be some
Magos.
logical side characters in here.
Yes, exactly. And then Magos is just a character who is like just being kind of like thrown around, but also has a lot of conviction in her action and finds a lot of justification for it. Magos' mom is one of my favorite characters. That
She's
lady
the
is great.
quintessential like Latino mom. Like,
Hmm.
yeah. Hmm.
Yes, yes. She's like, I will have this giant set, like this giant funeral procession for for my godson. Also, is very much like runs this house and owns this giant home, and it is just she's very like strong headed lead, or it's a matriarchy, you know, the head of a matriarch,
Hmm.
which is very, it's very very much just like in the culture. So
Hmm.
I absolutely loved it. The representation in this book is absolutely incredible, which
Yeah.
leads us to our next part and our next
Dun, dun,
POV,
dun.
Lena. So Magos comes to live with Lena. Lena stays home to take care of Magos, but Magos just watches zombie TV shows while mourning the loss of the creature. When Lena has to go to work for surgery, she asks Jackie to come and take care of Magos. When Lena returns, Magos seems to have come alive again. Jackie had told her that she saw the creature alive by the house. The three women roam the streets and find the creature. It had killed the neighbor's cats. When they try to capture it, Lena ends up falling off a ledge. Jackie and the other civilians save Lena while Magos catches the creature. Lena and Jackie want Magos to kill the creature, but she refuses. She takes it back to Lena's apartment, and despite the protests, Magos officially calls the creature Monstrilio. Joseph arrives to Lena's apartment, unaware that Magos is there. He is surprised to find Monstrilio is still alive. Monstrilio then says, Papi, and shocks them all. Magos and Joseph move back into their home in Mexico. They build a backyard home for Monstrilio and start to treat him like a child. Monstrilio is learning to speak and starting to grow feet and hands. When Magos and Joseph have to take care of Magos' mom, Lena offers to feed Monstrilio at work after work. She forgets, and the next morning she finds Monstrilio has escaped the home and killed dozens of neighborhood pets. Mago Magos wants Lena to perform a surgery on Monstrilio to remove his tail and help him, quote unquote, evolve into a human, and leaving behind his monster tendencies. Both Lena and Joseph are against it for various reasons. They suggest they smuggle Monstrilio into a hospital and give him an MRI. Their MRI shows that Monstrilio's internal anatomy is starting to become human. After seeing this, Lena agrees to perform the surgery. Monstrilio falls into depression after his surgery for several months. Joseph and Lena plan to put Monstrilio out of his misery, but Magos stops them. This causes the trio to finally separate. Joseph finally leaves Magos and they get a divorce. Lena moves to New York. Okay, so the one thing that wasn't mentioned in this little synopsis or part two
Hmm.
is a little bit of Lena's POV and
Hmm.
Lena's backstory. So Lena is by far my favorite character in this story.
Same. I
Oh
loved
my god,
Lena.
I love that. Okay, I'm so
Justice for
happy.
Lena because she was so mistreated in this book.
Yes, yes. Lena, this is again content warnings. A Lena is a lesbian, right?
Hmm.
Yes. Okay. Lena is a lesbian and is struggling with her sexuality. Lena is also a wildly successful surgeon in Mexico City. So much so that sometimes she will call upon sex workers to stay the night with her, but essentially she just requests for them to bathe her and kind of take care of her and help usher her to sleep. It is a very it's honestly a little bit tender and a little bit romantic what Lena is requesting. Um, but that's a little bit of Lena's like backstory. Lena is someone who is seeking love, who is seeking understanding, and is seeking a human connection. Lena also has a very Lena's a surgeon, right? So Lena has a very um kind of level-headed understanding of how to go about Monstrilio and how Monstrilio is like evolving. So her understanding of this whole situation is incredibly nice. Also very heartbroken because Lena was the one person that was there for Magos after all of this. And then the second that Santiago comes back, Magos like pieces out, which is awful.
Hmm. So, okay, the reason why I like Lena's character so much is because her backstory brings so much symbolism and like contrast to the story, because the reason why Lena and Magos are such best friends is that growing up, Lena came from a household where her mother thought she was a demon.
Yeah.
Like 100% convinced that she was a demon that was masquerading as a human child. And
Mhm.
so her mother like refused to show her love, and her father just stayed out of it and was like, your mother is just not well, understand her, like work with her. But like her mother refused to be a mother to her, and so she grew up with all of this abandonment issues, attachment issues, like wanting love, wanting a family, wanting to be accepted. And there is a part in the book where it mentions briefly how when she was a teenager and full of that, like that hate for like feeling that abandonment and neglect, she would like play the part of pretending to be a demon just to mess with her mom, because she
Mhm.
wanted like some semblance of
Some
control.
reaction, yeah.
And then she ends up moving in with Magos's family to finish school. And so she has this kinship towards Magos's family, towards like her mother and everything like that, and like the house, because she also kind of grew up there, and they took her in, and so she feels like indebted to this family. And a lot of the things that she does to help them out throughout the story is because she feels indebted to them, even though the logical part of her brain is like, this is not okay. We shouldn't be doing this. But there's
Yeah.
that guilt of like, they took me in when I had nobody. Like, I owe them everything. And then the fucking queer baiting in this book, okay?
Is
Like, I'm so pissed
incredible,
about it
yeah.
because Lena is lesbian. She's very from a very young age. She had signs of romantic feelings towards Magos. Like she was always in love with Magos. And Joseph, who's Magos' husband, was her friend originally, and then they both fell in love with Magos. And she was still having those romantic feelings for her, but accepting the fact that like her friend and her best friend are now together, and they're a married couple and they're starting their own lives, but she's still like subconsciously hoping to end up with Magos. And Magos
Yeah.
knows that Lena like is romantically interested in
Romantically,
her,
yeah.
and she uses that to
Mhm.
get what she wants. And it pisses me off so much because
Yeah.
Lena was doing so much for Magos in this like POV. And even in the first part, like in Magos's POV, we can kind of see like some tendencies of, quite frankly, Magos has like a narcissistic
Oh,
personality.
absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And in the beginning, you kind of dismiss it as the reader because you're just like,
Mhm.
oh, she's acting this way.
Grief.
She's lashing
Mhm.
out because of grief. Right.
Mhm.
And then slowly but surely, you're just like, no, that's kind of
It
who she was
continues.
before all of this.
Mhm.
And it's
Mhm.
kind of who she is after this. And so,
Mhm.
like, I just wanted better for
So
Lena. I just wanted better for Lena so much. And oh, also, the part that killed me is when they were going to find Monstrilio because they thought he was
Mhm.
dead. They went to go find
Mhm.
him. And Lena, like, literally puts herself in danger to try to get Monstrilio.
Mhm.
Okay? She falls, almost dies, and everybody else is trying to save Lena from
Mhm.
dying.
Mhm.
And Magos is like, peace, I'm gonna go find Monstrilio.
Fun,
And it's like
yeah.
just worried about the creature and just worried,
Mhm.
and is like taking care of him like a baby, while her best friend, who she supposedly loves like a sister, almost died.
Yeah. Yeah, that part I honestly that part I took as like again you justify a lot of Muggles' actions even as the reader because you're like she's just grieving her son, like she just wants her son. I understand that maternal instinct, I guess. But yeah, no, it's absolutely crazy. Lena is by far one of my favorite characters. Lena in this book is written in like Lena yearns for Muggles in a way that cannot be described by but like I can't describe it alone. Her yearning for a human connection and her yearning for that like touch is insane and is insatiable. And I love this character. I love this character. Lena just deserve you said it, Lena deserves better. And when she moved to New York, I thought she was gonna get, her happy ending. But that just does not happen because she keeps getting drawn back into the situation that is slowly like being foreshadowed. Okay, let's chat about Monstrilio, because Monstrilio now is no longer just a lung, but is able to talk and is going around and eating people's pets. How are we feeling about this little creature monster?
Okay, so I really like the development of Monstrilio here because honestly, I thought that he was just going to be like a creature throughout this
Okay.
entire book. And in
Okay.
later parts, we see that he evolves differently. But the way he was in part two is how I thought he was going to be throughout the rest of the book.
Okay.
And so I found it interesting. Like he was evolving and he was clearly like this monstrous creature. But Magos and Joseph were just like, this is our second chance. And like Joseph also like understood at his core that Monstrilio was not Santiago, but the
Mm-hmm.
emotional side of him, that grief and depression, he was just latching on to like any part that could like see his little son again.
Mm-hmm.
And so he went along with the Delulu because of the grief. And so like I didn't really have too much of like a thought on Monstrilio at this point. I
Okay.
was more kind of just examining how these three humans were interacting with Monstrilio and coming to
Okay.
terms with the concept of like, is he Monstrilio or is he Santiago? You know,
Mm-hmm.
is he becoming a human or is he still just a creature? And then
Mm-hmm.
we see like, hey, you know what? We have this whole you want to eat flesh thing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh that's like, a little bit of like the monster tendency there. How much is that going to play into it? I'm like, oh, this is going to get worse and worse and worse. And
Yeah,
I
it's
also
so
I
great.
I wanted to touch up on the surgery part
Yes, yes. This
because
was a very pivotal part in the book, I think.
I feel like that was such an important part because I feel like the author was trying to say so much with that,
Mm-hmm.
like for the reader to kind of like read into it more, because I think it has to do a lot with the fact that like for Monstrilio, the tail was kind of like the first part of him that grew and kind of what made him him, like his essence, his being. And it was just like, do you take it away? Like, how is that going to mess with his like psychology in regards to all of this? And I feel like that probably is a good question towards people who also are like transitioning and things like
Mm-hmm.
that, and like surgery for removal of certain parts that make people who they are, and things like that. And I just felt like it was not just about Monstrilio. Like I felt like there was so much about it, like on a global worldly matter. Um, but I like how the author introduced it. I really liked it.
Yes, I think it's absolutely incredible. So, a little bit about, I guess, Monstrilio's anatomy. I thought, as like I have a background in biology, right? So, like this part was so interesting to me. So essentially, think of Monstrilio like a little like just like blob, right, with a tail. Much like there's a couple Pokemon that I can like equate him to. You know what I mean? Um and the Monstrilio would like swing around with his by his tail. It would use his tail as like the arms that didn't have. So as soon as he started developing, arms and leg and starting to walk, they were Magos specifically was like, oh well, we should get rid of this tail to make Monstrilio more human. And Lena's first instinct was, wait a minute, is this connected to any other organ in the body? Which is why they went to do an MRI scan and try to see what other organs this, like, would this kill Monstrilio or not? Is it connected to anything else? We don't know his anatomy. Um, and so whenever they cut this, they decide to cut the tail, Monstrilio really like goes into a depression. And this part is so incredibly sad and is so Oh my gosh, it was literally like morning again. Because now you have this creature who is now mourning a part of their life that they once associated very closely to. And it's just gone. Yes, it was it was an appendage that wasn't connected to anything vital, but it was so important to who Monstrilio was as a person, or as a creature, to how Monstrilio identified, that by cutting it, you were butchering what was once uh like what once Monstrilio so closely used to identify by. And it is so perfect. This book's representation, this book, whether it's upfront like Lena, or later on Joseph, foreshadowing, this book's queer representation is so vast and so good. I feel like so many queer communities can relate, and you touched on it right away. I feel like a lot of the trans community can possibly find a lot of
Mm-hmm.
close relation to Monstrilio's struggle with identifying, and it's so so good. I love it. This book is just like a treasure trove of ways that it can be looked at with different lenses. It's so nice.
Okay.
Are we
Moving on
ready?
to Joseph's part. I have a lot to say about Joseph's part, so let's
Okay.
let's jump straight into it. Okay.
I mentioned earlier I gave this book a 9 out of 10 for characters. Joseph, this is the one POV that I could not stand. I wanted this to be done and over with. I could not care for Joseph's POV.
Okay, I didn't have an issue with Joseph. Like as a
Okay.
character, his
Okay.
POV.
Hmm.
I'm talking about the events that happened in this POV.
Oh, yeah. This is when everything goes kind of cuckoo crazy.
Okay, so we get a time jump. Okay,
Hmm.
so many years have passed. Joseph has moved back to New York and has started a relationship with a man named Peter. So, by the way, up to this point, I hadn't seen any kind of like potential queer awakening for Joseph. So I
Hmm.
guess this happens through the time jump, and we're just like, okay, now he's gay.
Sure.
So Peter proposes to Joseph, and he says yes. He's scared of telling Peter the truth about Monstrilio. So in the last couple of years, Monstrilio has evolved into a human and now resembles a teenage boy, but he still has fangs. Joseph views him as a new son and calls him M, but Magos still views him as Santiago. Magos' mother has passed away. Magos has become a successful performative artist. She moves to Berlin with Monstrilio. She gets Monstrilio a job as an assistant in an art gallery. Lena works as a surgeon in New York. After the first year, she and Magos get back in touch and become friends again. Boo. Monstrilio calls Joseph in the middle of the night and reveals he had sex with his boss and accidentally bit him, but assures him he's okay. Magos invites Joseph, Peter, and Lena to her latest performative piece in Berlin. Peter announces to the group that they are engaged. Joseph and Peter tour Berlin with Monstrilio and his boyfriend Thomas, his boss. They all attend Magos' show, where she reenacts the moment they discovered Santiago had passed in his sleep. Joseph and Lena are enraged, and Monstrilio runs away during the performance. They go to Magos' house and discover that Monstrilio has attacked their neighbor. Joseph takes Monstrilio away while Magos and Lena wait for the ambulance. Joseph ends up taking Monstrilio back with him to New York. Okay,
So this is
let's
like the the
unpack all of
story.
this.
The
Yeah.
story literally just like skyrockets into like full on creature horror at this point. At first it was a family drama, and now it's a family drama but like tenfold. It's so crazy.
Okay, so at first I want to talk about Magos because she
Okay.
continues to piss me off in this
Yes.
POV.
Yes.
Okay, so it was alluded in the first and second part. She was briefly talking about what to do with her life
Hmm.
afterwards.
Hmm.
And it basically shows that like Joseph was the breadwinner. He was the one
Hmm.
working, and Magos was taking care of Santiago because of his health issues. And so she was like a stay-at-home mom. But now that she and Joseph are separated, you know, what is she going to do for money? What is she going to do for work? What is she going to do with her life? And Magos is trying to figure out what she wants to do. And she decides that she wants to be a performative artist. So she wants to put like on dramatic pieces, like as an actor, as a performer. And Lena brings up an interesting point in the second POV because she shares this with her. And she's like, is that going to make you money? And she's like, well, not at first, but I can just live off Joseph's money. And I'm just like, okay. So I was like hoping that Magos' career would crash and burn, and instead it does the opposite, where she's such a successful performative artist because she likes the flair for the drama and the spotlight to be on her. And so she becomes a successful performative artist doing like very not controversial, but very like out of pocket performances that like the noir like artist scene like loves about her. And so her whole art piece where she reenacts this extremely traumatizing event, which here's the thing. If she was just doing it for herself and wanting to share that grief with others in art, that's fine. But what she didn't do was invite all these people and not tell them that that's what this piece was going to be about. When
Yeah.
Joseph was in the audience, and this was an extremely like triggering moment for him. Lena as well, who was like growing up with this family, a part of it, and also Mrs. Santiago was there to witness it. Monstrilio, she did not tell Monstrilio, who is her son, that she considers Santiago, that she was going to be doing this reenactment of his death.
Monstrilio also didn't really know. That
Yeah.
was like another thing. Monstrilio had a lot of like kind of knew but didn't know about his past. And this was just like like all the pieces kind of like came together during this point.
This was extremely selfish of Magos to do. I was so pissed off with her character. I felt for the other characters. And I think maybe that's part of the reason why I don't dislike Joseph is because I see him as a victim of Magos' selfishness. So
I
I'm
get it.
very sympathetic towards Lena and Joseph.
I
In my
get
mind,
it.
they're paired together.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just so pissed with this. I was also pissed with Lena that she was back to being friends with Magos. I'm like,
Yeah.
you left to another country. You could have started over. You could have found love, but you still see that Lena has never found love because she's like still latching onto the idea that one day Magos will like come to
One
her.
day. Yeah. Joseph's POV, like I don't know, I just it felt a little lacking to me. Granted, this is kind of when the story like takes like literally blasts off into outer space. I don't know. He just felt like a little boring to me. That's the only thing. I was like, this is the one chapter where I was like, he's fine, I guess. But I liked Magos because it's obviously very dramatic and Magos is incredibly like narcissistic and very self-serving. Lena's story is just absolutely heartbreaking and heart-wrenching. But this part was so interesting to me from Monstrilio's POV. Monstrilio kind of grew up to be just this kind of like this like
E-
teenager.
this emo teenager.
Yeah, which is literally, I told Millie I was getting dressed today for recording, and I was like, I'm dressing how I imagine Monstrilio would have dressed during like his teen years. Described as wearing a lot of baggy clothing to kind of hide or mask his like weirdly shaped body. So, I really liked it. I felt like a setting this setting like taking place in Berlin. It was just in like the Berlin art scene was just perfect because nobody would really like bat an eye at
Mhm.
Monstrilio's like weird quirks and like the fangs. Monstrilio also comes face to face with sexuality and has sex during this, which I found so interesting. I loved it. I was like, yes, just it was great. I loved it. This book also, newsflash, touches on kink and touches on consent, which is Millie's like, what the hell's happening? I loved
Okay.
it.
Okay. Before I jump into that topic, I'm
Okay.
gonna backtrack a little bit here.
Okay.
I appreciated with Joseph's POV, that we got
Okay.
to see his relationship with Monstrilio as
Hmm.
like his second son. Like in
Yes.
his mind, Santiago was his firstborn,
Hmm.
Monstrilio is his secondborn, and he views them as two separate beings. Okay, and he's very mindful of treating Monstrilio like his own person, because at this point they're pretending he's a person, they're pretending he's a human, and he's trying to be a father even though he's at a distance from Monstrilio. But he's trying to be a father figure to him. He's trying to be someone that he can open up to and be honest and truthful to. And like Monstrilio really does that, because he calls him in the middle of the night to be like, I just had sex for the first time, right? Which, what teenage boy does that, right? But what I irked me was the fact that he had sex with his boss, because
Yeah.
Monstrilio is like just like depicted as a teenager. They say that he's basically like a teenager. So in my mind, he's a minor. And I'm just like, he's having sex with like an adult man who's like probably taking advantage of him. And like Joseph was like not reacting to it the way that he was supposed to react as a father figure. But then it later tells you that Monstrilio is 18,
Hmm.
and so it's supposed to be like okay, this relationship.
Hmm.
But I was just like, so I was so turned off by it, because I couldn't even appreciate like the conversation about sex and the conversation about Monstrilio as a monster pretending to be human to have sex, because I was so turned off by like him being a minor boy having
Mine.
sex with his boss. Like, ugh.
That's so funny. Honestly, I didn't even catch that while we were going. I honestly pictured Monsilio, like they say he's a teenager. But for some reason in my head during this part, thinking back now, I always just assumed that he was like in like late teens, early 20s. I don't
Mhm.
know. It just felt like that kind of vibe, I guess, which is like my bad for not catching that. But I loved this moment of like him calling his dad and be like, I just had sex with my boss. And then his dad being like, okay. The power dynamics are also quite interesting because Monstrilio obviously, I say this so matter of fact, Monstrilio obviously likes to eat meat and likes the thought of biting people and eating people. And I guess that would be a little bit assuring to a parent. I would be like, well, at least my son has a way of like defending himself. It's a monster, right? So he has a way of defending himself against any possible potential harm. But then that is greatly escalated by the fact that after Monstrilio witnesses Magos's art piece, um, in a feat of rage, runs away and ends up eating and murdering their neighbor.
Okay.
Uh yeah.
Okay, so I have a lot to say about this, because
Okay.
first of all, it was foreshadowed perfectly, because there's
Yes.
this conversation that Magos was having with Joseph, being like, "Oh my God, Monstrilio is like opening up. He's making friends. We have our neighbor. He loves the neighbor's cat. He's like friends with him, and he's friends with our neighbor." And I'm like, "He gonna
The
eat that
neighbor's
cat.
gonna die. Yeah.
He's gonna eat that cat." Like, Magos, you are into Lululand. He's gonna eat that cat.
Yeah.
He does. Spoiler alert. He does.
Yeah.
But no, the thing that's interesting about, again, bringing it back to it being in Joseph's POV for this, is that when there was that moment when Monstrilio escaped in part 2, and he killed like dozens and dozens of neighborhood pets, okay? And he brought them all back to show like that he had done these kills, right? And Lena and Joseph witnessed it firsthand, right? And they were like clearly shocked and a little bit traumatized from that. And that was the moment that the light switched in Joseph's head, and he no longer saw Monstrilio as the Santiago reborn, but like Monstrilio as his own being that has a monstrous tendency. So
Hmm.
anytime he interacts with Monstrilio, he has that logic in the back of his head that fights against his sentiment of it being his son. And it
Hmm.
reminds him, it keeps him grounded that like Monstrilio could do these things, right? So
Hmm.
that's like anytime he talks about certain things, he's always like, but are you okay? Like, did you bite him? Did you eat him?
Yes.
Like, did you do anything
Yes.
like that, right?
Yeah.
So he's hyper aware of the fact that like Monstrilio could snap at any moment, while Magos is just like, no, he's a human boy. He's like, he's perfectly healed now. Like, we cut off his
She's in
tail, like he's no
delusion.
longer a
Yeah.
monster.
Yes, yes, literally yes to all of that. Yes, it's yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes, 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 yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely crazy. Just like the differences in these characters. I also found it hilarious that Monstrilio has a tendency or an appetite for cats, but has a lot of cat-like tendencies. Cats are known for going out like hunting and then bringing back to their parents, to their owner, like, look, I caught a mouse, look, I caught a lizard. So I just thought it was really funny. It's very like predator prey dynamics with Monstrilio,
Mm-hmm.
but I absolutely I love it. I just honestly I wanted to be like, just let Monstrilio eat. Just let him
Just
eat.
let him eat
It's
people.
okay. Yeah,
Okay.
it's okay.
One more thing about this part before we move
Hmm.
on. Okay, so this is the part in the book where unfortunately the logical part of my brain, I couldn't turn it off
Okay.
because everything leading up to this kind of made sense to a
Sense.
certain
Yeah.
degree. Like
Hmm.
how
Hmm.
they were able to hide this creature, and things
Hmm.
like that. But now they're passing off this creature as a human. And I'm like, how evolved is he that he's passing as a human? They're talking about how he still has like fur on certain parts of his head. They're talking about how he has fangs, how he still has like the stump on his body. I was like, how is anybody convinced that this creature is a human boy? It reminds me of like the three little creatures that are in a trench coat, like pretending to be a human. To
Hmm.
like that's how I picture it in my head, and I'm just like, is everybody just like going on with this? Like Thomas, his boss, doesn't think that he's not a human boy. Peter, who has seen him multiple times now, is just like, yeah, he's just a moody teenage boy. I'm like, how is this passing? You know? And then on top of that, I'm thinking about the logistics. I was like, how did Magos get him into Berlin? How did she pass through TSA? Okay, how does he have a passport? Like, how did he get into Berlin? Like that part, like pissed me off because I'm just like, we're like letting go of all logic right now. Like,
Yeah.
how did Joseph get him back to New York? How did he enter the U.S. TSA? Like, how is this
Yeah.
gonna work?
So okay. So obviously, well, not all. Obviously, in this world, they find out the Joseph, Magos, and Lena and Peter all find out that Monstrilio ate the neighbor. Lena and Magos, I believe, go to try to save the neighbor, and they are calling the ambulance, and then Joseph and not really Peter. I don't think Peter's there during this scene, but
No, he's
but
not.
Peter, yeah, Peter and Monstrilio are like on a mission to try to get rid of any evidence that would tie Monstrilio to this murder. And the plan is to take Monstrilio back to New York and manages to do that. There are, I do believe there are some mentions of like a vague passport or like some kind of fake identification, but that's all we get for
Oh, okay.
justification.
Yeah, it's because they use Santiago's. Like they're passing him off
Yes.
as Santiago, so they're
Yeah.
using Santiago's passport and stuff like that. Okay, fine. There is some logic to it, but it's like you really
it's
have to suspend
it's
disbelief.
very shoestring logic. All right, and that
Yes.
leads us to our last POV, which is Monstrilio's POV, and is literally one of my favorite POVs. Is so crazy. Also, the way that this part is written is different. The language
Yes.
used is that of like, I don't know, like the sentences are choppy. It doesn't really make sense. It's very kind of bare bones. It's yeah, it's written differently, which I appreciated because then you really are like, you're like, okay, this is not a human's, even a teenager's, like actual teenager. It kind of reminds you that this is a monster.
Hmm.
Okay, so part four, Monstrilio's POV. Magos and Lena appear in New York a couple of weeks later with Monstrilio's things. Monstrilio overhears Magos and Joseph talking. The neighbor has died after a long battle in the ICU. Monstrilio gets a job at a used bookstore. He starts using dating apps to date again. He fled from a one night stand when a temptation to eat human appears again, but he continues to go on dates and resists. He misses Thomas, who understood his weirdness. He goes on a date with a man who gives him cocaine. At his home, he starts to beat Monstrilio, so Monstrilio attacks him and flees. A man named Sam, who he was dating, allows him to eat him. Yes, that is true. He is a fanatic who believes Monstrilio is a god who will transform him. After eating him, his stump is used to have his tail start. Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm going to start that part over again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He misses Thomas, who understood his weirdness. Monstrilio goes on a date with a man who gives him cocaine. At his house, he starts to beat Monstrilio. So Monstrilio attacks him and flees. A man named Sam, who he was dating, allows Monstrilio to eat him. Sam is a fanatic who believes Monstrilio is a god who will transform him. After eating him, Monstrilio's stump, that used to be a tail, starts to grow again. News spreads about the killing, so Magos, Joseph, and Lena get into action on hiding the evidence. After a while, the case is closed because there is no evidence. Joseph and Peter have planned their wedding back in Joseph, Mago, and Santiago's original family home. Everyone travels together with Monstrilio. Um, the night before the wedding, Monstrilio announces he is leaving. He no longer wants to try and act human. He wants to live as a monster he has always been. Everyone tearfully says goodbye, and he disappears into the forest in his true form. I cried at the end. Okay, so let's get into the section because the section is a little kooky crazy. Oh, Benji has stuff to say. I totally understand. So after Joseph and Monstrilio come back to New York, they actually land and are now living, or at least Monstrilio is now living in Joseph's uncle's home. And Joseph's uncle is a really interesting character. Joseph's uncle is actually entirely mute and is so caring and understanding towards Monstrilio. Like, there's a scene where the uncle, like, Monstrilio comes home from work because Monstrilio now works at a used bookstore, and the uncle has like an entire spread, yeah, a carcass of like it's, I believe it's like a cow or something, and just like allows Monstrilio to just eat and like satiate his thirst for flesh. Monstrilio dating is also incredibly, it's traumatic, truly, to say the least. How did you feel about that?
Okay, so I,
Monstrilio is indeed like a late teens, early 20s,
mhm.
and just broke things off with his lover. So yeah, how did we feel about this?
I definitely felt conflicted about this.
Okay.
I felt conflicted because I felt like I knew what the author was trying to do. I just don't know if personally that was the right approach with this book.
Okay.
And the reason I say this is because I feel like my interpretation of it was that the author was showing Monstrilio having this dating, but also being a gay young adult, entering the dating field, right? And it's still somewhat dangerous for young gay youths to enter dating fields because you don't really know exactly who you're going to be meeting with some of the time. And sometimes, like in the situation where he met with this older man who was assaulting him, and if it was any like regular human, like young boy, um, that guy could have killed him like
Oh,
easily.
absolutely.
Like it
Hmm.
was a really like scary situation. And I think the author was trying to highlight that as if something that is a reality for young gay men who are in the dating field and how it's still not the safest, situation for them. But I kind of feel like it didn't work with Monstrilio being a monster. And I also felt the
Interesting.
same way with the kink aspect as well. Because,
Okay,
like,
interesting.
one could argue that, like, oh, the kinkiness has to do with him being a monster, not with him
Hmm.
being a human.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
feel like that's kind of like already there's a negative stigma against, like, kink and that aspect of, like, the sexual aspect of community, as well as, like, the gay community and sex. There's already like a lot of negative stigma that comes around it. And so I feel like it, including it and including it on such a graphic nature with a character who's described as a monster, I just don't know if that's necessarily the lens that I wanted to see it in, because I kind of feel like that like subconsciously reinforces that negative stigma of it
Interesting.
being like
Okay.
uh what's the word I'm looking for? Like it being someone who's like, you know, not a good person, not a good person who's engaging in this kind of like troubled behavior kind of deal.
Hmm.
Like, I don't know.
I
For
getcha.
me,
I
it
getcha.
felt weird in that
I
regard.
see. I see what you mean. Okay. Well, let me share a little bit about my POV and how I took it, and that maybe might sway you a little bit.
Mhm.
So, by this point in the story, I am so like enamored with Monstrilio, and I hold this little misunderstood creature very near and dear. I am like I see I see the humanity in this monster. One can argue you don't even need to see the humanity in this monster, because at the end of the day it's a monster, and by trying to personify him you're taking away his like essence, you know? So take that for what it's worth. But the power dynamics in which Monstrilio is engaging in when it comes to dating is what is so interesting to me. So, in the first instance, where Monstrilio goes on a date with this man, and this man is really abusive and is assaulting. That's the right term, is assaulting Monstrilio. Monstrilio goes in very like naively. And yes, 100%. I do think that this might be might parallel the dangers of a lot of like early gay experiences where you're like meeting up with a stranger who you don't know, they're on the internet, and they're significantly older than you, and you already have that power dynamic because this man is a lot bigger than Monstrilio and is wealthy, owns cocaine, lives in New York, is in a high rise, that whole thing. It was very much giving me Norman Bates from American
Mhm.
Psycho. That's the vibe I was getting, right? And there's already that power dynamic that we're entering. And this man also wants something from Monstrilio, but wants it in a very like wants to partake in this like kink behavior, but wants it in a very like dominating way where there wasn't a lot of consent and there wasn't a lot of like communication. Monstrilio thought that he was going to be the one that was going to have some semblance of power in this dynamic, and that didn't play out at all. Monstrilio actually had to like run away and like escape. So I think that this first dynamic sets up a yes, a cautionary tale, but also shows you that Monstrilio maybe is not the monster that we think Monstrilio is, and is just being
Mm.
fetishized for this behavior that he has, right? Now the second instance is absolutely insane because we meet this character named Sam, who Sam is obviously like cuckoo delulu insane, where Sam thinks that Monstrilio is a god and is part Sam is like part of a cult, right? It later comes out that Sam is part of a cult and believes in being eaten will like result him in like being transformed. So Sam is a consenting adult who wants something from Monstrilio. And in this dynamic, Monstrilio has the full power, where Monstrilio is kind of being like, you know, tell me to stop. Like, are you sure you want me to do this? And Sam was like, yeah, just go for it. To the point where Sam at the end, or close to the end of his life, is kind of like, slow down, like, stop what are you doing? This actually hurts. Gets in over their head. So I think that both of these situations are one is one Monstrilio has no power. The second one, Monstrilio has all the power. But in both ways, they are both fetishizing Monstrilio for his nature. You know, for these people, in both cases, for these men, this is a kink to them. It's something that they want done. It's something that they would like to partake in, but they don't necessarily have to all the time, right? For Monstrilio, this is something that is so innate to him, eating people, eating flesh, consuming. It's something that is so innate to him and innate to who he is, that it almost feels like in these two acts, he's being fetishized, and it makes him more endearing to me. It also is the naivety that Monstrillo comes in to these scenarios that is very like I can see why you would be like, oh, this is a very it very much gives me it's naive. It's a very naive attitude, and I know that you are not a fan of naive characters. So
That's true. I'm getting some
yeah.
Claire Nessie flashbacks right
That's
now.
what I was thinking. That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
because I think that is true. Like, I think you definitely have a more tender approach to Monstrilio.
yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
you connected with this character more. And I
Mhm.
think that, like, I still saw Monstrilio, I think, as a literary device in this book
Mhm. Mhm.
versus him being his own character. Because
Yes, I totally see that.
I resonated more with the human characters and their
Yep.
depiction of grief and their
Mhm.
choices that they were making
Mhm.
surrounding all of this,
Mhm.
while being aware of the monster versus human kind of nature discussion that is constantly being brought up in different scenarios. But yeah, I never really kind of was looking at Monstrilio as his own character, and I wasn't as invested in his part, probably because of that.
Yeah, I totally get that. That's why this last chapter I feel like is so perfect. Also ending on his POV is incredible. So
Oh yeah.
at the yeah, it's so powerful. So at the end, Joseph and Peter are getting married. They go back to the original house where this all started, where Santiago died essentially. They go back to that house. And this house again is in upstate New York, and if you know anything about the geography, it's like surrounded by trees in nature. It's very much there. The day before the wedding, Monstrilio kind of has this like realization that Monstrilio like no longer wants to live this life where he's pretending to be human. And then just kind of like they all just kind of accept it after hiding hiding a body, hiding several bodies. At this point, we've hidden two bodies. Granted, when this was happening again, I kind of skipped forward way too much. After the second murder, when they were hiding the body and trying to like disguise everything, I was like, not again. Please, not again. This is happening again. I was like, I just want peace. I just want peace. I want Monstrilio to like live a free life. And then we get that, right? Monstrilio just kind of like says goodbye and then disappears into the forest. And I was sobbing, crying. How did you feel the hiding of the body and then this part?
Okay, the thing that what I found interesting was how all of the characters reacted
Mhm.
to Monstrilio once again killing a human, because
Mhm.
it's like they fall into the same patterns. Okay, they fall
Mhm.
into the same patterns
Mhm.
where
Mhm.
Magos is just like, oh my god, my poor boy, like he had to do this, like this is so horrible. But at the same time, she's just like, we need to hide the evidence, like nobody can take away Monstrilio.
Mhm.
um when their neighbor was attacked in Berlin, she hesitated on calling the ambulance because she's like, let's just let him die. Because if he dies, there's no witnesses, you know? Like, she is brutal. She is cutthroat. She
Yeah.
is like mama bear for Monstrilio and only
Yeah.
Monstrilio. And then Lena is always responding, being like, Monstrilio's a monster. Like, of course he's going to do this. Like, this is going to happen time and time again. And then
Mhm.
Joseph's just like, no, it was an accident. Monstrilio is not going to do this again. He knows better. Like he knows how to control himself. It would just happen one more time, just one more time, right? And Joseph, that's his delulu-ness going, being like, he won't do it again, when
Mhm.
we all know he's going to do it again.
He's gonna do it again. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I I didn't like the ending. I didn't like the ending.
Okay. Elaborate. Explain,
Yes.
please.
Okay. I'm going to say two statements about this
Okay.
book that
Okay.
completely contradict who I am as a person and who I am as a
Okay.
reader.
Okay.
Um, we'll start with the first one, which is about the ending.
Okay. Okay.
I needed more horror for this book.
Okay.
Yeah, right. I don't like
Okay.
horror. I don't like
No.
horror movies. I don't like horror content. I don't like a lot of horror in my books. And there's very few books that I do enjoy that have a horror element to it. This is one of them. This is one of them, by the way, that I do like. I do enjoy the horror element of this book.
Mhm.
However, the entire book felt like it was this huge momentum leading up to it. Like, you were getting just like glimpse and teases in here of just like Monstrilio's monstrous tendencies, right? He starts off with small creatures, then he goes to bigger creatures, then he goes to like kind of hurting humans, to then full on killing humans, to full on eating humans, right? I was expecting a horrendous like ending. I was expecting death and gore. I was predicting the entire time which one of the humans was going to get eaten.
Okay. Okay.
Right? Right?
Okay.
Okay. The
You were like,
beginning,
it's gonna be Muggles. It's gonna be Muggles.
the beginning, I thought it was going to
That
be
would be
Muggles
very
because
good.
I thought it was
That
going
would
to
be
be
very
like
good.
a self-fulfilling prophecy, especially
That would
with
be very
the
good.
folklore that Jackie was
Yeah.
telling her in the
Uh-huh.
beginning. Because it's like, okay, this is going to end terribly, right? Like he's going to
Yeah.
kill somebody. I thought that like Magos in like a full-on just like she's completely lost her bonkers was going to like it full circle like allow herself to be eaten to be like with her son again. Like I thought that was
That
going to
would
happen,
be,
like this
yeah.
self-sacrificing cannibalism. I thought that like at one point like it could have been Joseph, because like Joseph like always believes that Monstrilio is never going to hurt anybody, that it's okay, it's fine, he has like self-restraint, and that he was going to get attacked, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
just by
Mm-hmm.
accident, right?
Mm-hmm.
I also thought at one point once we got introduced to Peter, I was like, oh, Peter's going to get eaten. Peter's going to get eaten, and that's going to be like the final breaking point of them having to like kill Monstrilio or something like that,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because he eats Peter. Like I and then at the end I was just like, oh, like maybe he's gonna like peace out, like when Monstrilio's gonna like leave, but before he leaves he's gonna eat the uncle, because the uncle's like, hey, I'm
Oh.
dying, I'm terminally
Yeah.
ill, I'm ready to
Uh-huh.
go, like take me out, you can eat me on my way
Mm-hmm.
out. And then it's
Mm-hmm.
like they come home to find that, and Monstrilio's disappeared. So like the entire time I thought that one of the pivotal characters was gonna get eaten by Monstrilio, and I was
Okay.
waiting for it. So when it didn't happen, I was just like,
Oh,
"What?"
that's it?
Like we're like on this like bittersweet ending, and I was like,
Uh-huh.
"Where's the blood? Where's the violence? Where's the gore? Where's the
I'm dead.
corpses?" Like I
Okay.
was expecting that. So I think that's for me. That was my expectation the entire book. So for
Okay.
me, it was a
That's fair
letdown
enough.
because of my own expectations.
Okay. That's funny. I totally
Where's
get
the
that.
horror?
What you said about Magos being eaten by Monstrilio, that would have been very
A
full
good
circle, I think.
full
Yeah.
circle. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. That would have been the tail eating. That would have been the snake eating its own tail, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That would have been very, very good. I had never even thought about that. Sorry, was it the you said you were gonna say two things. That was one of them?
Uh-huh. Okay, so here's the second one.
Okay.
And I know based off your thoughts so far that we are on opposite sides of this, but
Okay. Okay.
I think this book was too gay.
Oh, that's so funny. Okay.
I
Okay.
think
Go
the
on.
book is too, because like I love my gay literature. I love reading gay books on my channel. That's part of my brand. And I don't think I've ever said this about a book, but this book is too gay. This book is too gay.
Okay.
And
Go on.
I'm not like, on one hand it's funny because it's so gay, but on the other hand it's just like I don't feel like it serves the purpose it's supposed to because it's too gay. Okay, here's the thing.
Okay.
Here's the
Okay.
thing. Magos is straight, right? Like
Yes.
whatever. Joseph ends up being gay. Lena's gay.
Yes. Yes.
It's hinted that Magos' mother and Jackie have like a lesbian relationship with each other.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then and then Monstrilio himself is gay, like is on the
Yes.
queer spectrum. So
Yes.
it just kind of felt like every single character that is introduced in this story ends up being some kind of queer identity. Like I was
Yeah.
half expecting like Uncle Luke to end up being gay. Okay? Like
I get you. That's one thing. I would, no, when I was talking to Cynthia about it, I was like, this entire book is queer. Everybody in this book is queer, except for Magos, who is arguably the most insane, deranged character, is straight. And I'm like, isn't that funny? Isn't that hilarious? I do understand what you're saying though, because you're like, oh my god, it cannot be this perfect of a family unit.
it's like how is everybody in this family so gay? And I just feel like it was too much,
Okay.
because I felt like the topics that they were talking about with sexual identity were good, but then
Mhm.
it feels like it kind of defeats the purpose when you're having that like light bulb moment for every single character.
I
Like
see what you mean.
I feel like it needed to be edited down just a little bit. Like, yes, of course, majority gay characters, right?
Mhm.
But it felt weird to have like every character be gay.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like that took away from the impact of it by
I
making all the
see.
characters like it. So
I
that's where my
see.
hesitation with it
You're
leads to.
like I needed normal problematic straight characters to you be used as a backdrop to highlight and heighten my revelations with these queer characters.
Uh huh.
You're like, I needed a blank piece of paper to make my highlighter look nice or pop out
Exactly.
more.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's
Yes.
so funny. No, I can see that. I can see that. I can see that. I can see what you mean. How yeah, the thing you said about like every revelation, every light bulb moment isn't as bright when there are several of them back to back to
Mm-hmm.
back. I totally get that. That is so funny. Those two statements are so contrast to what I would ever hear you say. And that
Right.
alone makes me so happy because that means that this book was me suggesting this book is was a success. Not
Yes.
only did you like you liked a literary horror fiction. What?
I know. Who am I?
Oh my god, and then you requested for more blood, you requested for more bodies. Oh
Yeah.
my god. Okay, so now do you know what I mean when I say that this is a modern retelling of Frankenstein?
Yes. Yes, it is.
It's so
I will say that I, as like Latino as this book is, which it's done beautifully, artfully. Um, I wouldn't, because I'm a stickler for this. I'm an annoying stickler for this. I wouldn't categorize this as magic realism.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
Hmm.
you would categorize it as horror.
I would categorize this as a literary fiction, literary horror with a fantastical element.
Okay, okay,
But I wouldn't
okay.
consider it magic realism because for me,
Oh, why?
magic
Yeah, tell us.
magic realism is when there's a magical element in a world that is just universally seen and accepted.
Okay.
So a lot of like the Latino magic realisms, you'll have like fantastical things that happen, but everybody around them, like all the people that are mentioned in this story, like in this world, accepts them as like, oh, this just happens. Yeah, like angels fall from the sky. Like, yeah, that's a
Okay.
thing that happens.
Okay.
Versus in this case, like Monstrilio is a monster that all of these people seem to be okay with, but like the rest of the world would not be okay with it. They would not think that
Right.
this creature is real and stuff like that. So because I'm a stickler for that, I feel like it wouldn't categorize as
Mm,
magic
I
realism,
see. I see.
but it's in that realm of it and
Mhm.
it's like in an
Mhm.
homage to it, which I do
Mhm.
appreciate.
I will say, I mean, a lot of the other characters in this world don't even acknowledge Monstrilio as a
Hmm.
monster or as a creature. They're just
Hmm.
kind of like blinded to it, which
Hmm.
there has to be something there. There's got to be some other like way of interpreting this where only this nuclear chosen family seems to understand or view Monstrilio as a monster. Meanwhile,
Hmm.
everybody else just sees him as like a guy, you know?
Yeah.
There's got to be something there. I'm
I
not smart
feel
enough to
like
think about. I'm not smart
I
enough to
feel
come up
like
with that.
if this story was told
Mhm.
where the setting was only Mexico City and then
Mhm.
we had it be a thing like already in the culture that like
Mm.
sometimes when you feed certain parts of people's
Organs.
bodies they turn
Mhm.
into creatures and that's a thing that
Mhm.
happens, you shouldn't do that, right?
Mhm.
And so everybody who lives in this world is aware that that happens and that's an understood fact, then I feel like this would be considered magic realism.
I see. I see. So yeah,
Hmm.
maybe so taking it to other countries where this is just not a thing or
Hmm.
is not actively talked about or or like disclosed about being a thing gets it out of that space. That's so interesting. I haven't even thought about that. Huh.
Hmm.
Okay. Um Final thoughts on this book. Millie.
Okay. I think that objectively, this is a really, really good book. Like, it's written so well. It has so much depth to it, so many layers, so much symbolism. There's a lot to discuss with this book. I think it's a modern classic. I definitely think that this is a book that should be added to university like readings for like those English majors.
Yes.
Um, like yeah, and I think that this book would be really really good for that. Probably not for high schoolers.
No.
Just the amount of like sexual content, I would like be like let's not do that. Um, and I think it's really good. I think it's really good, and I do stand by. I think it's like for me like a low 4 star because
Okay.
I think that like the writing, the atmosphere, the character work is just so good. I think that there's like certain elements of the plot that didn't 100% work for me, which hindered
Okay.
a little bit of my enjoyment, which is
Okay.
why you get like character, atmosphere, writing are all like 9 and 10 versus
Hmm.
like enjoyment, logic, plot is like 7 out of 10. And
Hmm.
so that's where it equates to it being like a low 4 star where it's like I'm glad I read it. I got a lot out of it. Is it my new favorite book? No. Am I going to recommend it to people who I think would like it? Yeah. So I think you picked a really good book for this podcast to discuss.
Oh, I'm so happy. Oh, that is everything I wanted to hear and more. I knew you weren't going to absolutely love it because some of the topics are incredibly polarizing. I knew that the logic aspect was going to drive you insane. Whenever I was reading it, I was like, there's no way in hell they're going to get this monster out of Berlin. Like, literally, I also was thinking the TSA, like, I was also thinking in that brain space.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I knew that a lot of the logic was going to just be like out the window. I was well aware that that was going to be one of the things that hindered you on it. Um, I knew that the plot was also a little bit outlandish. And so I was like, maybe she's not going to follow along with it. Maybe she's not going to be like just thrusted into this world. But I knew that the characters and I knew that the aspects that it talked about you were going to be able to resonate with them. Even
Mm-hmm.
leaving Lena's backstory and how insane some of that is, I knew that it was still going to like you were still going to be able to see the humanity in this
Mm-hmm.
creature book, and I absolutely loved it. I was so happy that you enjoyed it. I was so nervous.
I
Oh
know
my
you were so
god, I
nervous. I was
was
like,
so nervous.
should I put her out of her misery and tell her that I didn't like the book? I was
No.
like, no, let's just send her like memes for her to interpret.
Oh my god,
Um,
it was horrifying. Horrifying behavior coming out of you today. Out of you this entire week. Oh, it was so good. So if you obviously my final thoughts, if you have not picked up this book, you're insane. This is absolutely a classic. Not to mention this is a debut novel.
I know that is
Isn't
crazy.
that insane?
I would pick up more of his books. I would love to see more of his
Absolutely.
writing.
Absolutely. It is this book is so incredible and it's so captivating. It's not that long. Truly, it is not that long. It's every I recommend this to everybody I meet. I absolutely love this book and yeah, I definitely think it's going to be a classic and this book is literally just a treasure trove of, ways of interpreting human relations and grief and the what someone is willing to do for someone that they love, and I absolutely adore it. Okay, I'm so happy we read this, but we do have other stuff we're gonna get to, which is
Hmm.
it's gonna get crazy. So Millie, what's coming up next for us?
All right, we have a diverse lineup of genres. So, for the next episode, we are going more classical mystery thriller.
Hi, editing Greta here. I am so sorry to interrupt your podcast, but we did want to let you know that our reading schedule has changed just a teeny tiny little bit. Previously, next episode was going to be The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley, but plans changed, and instead we are going to be reading None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. It is also a mystery. It is also a bit of a whodunit. So we hope you can join us for that. After that, everything else is staying the same. That is all I have for you today. Enjoy the rest of the episode. Bye.
Following that, the next couple of episodes, we're going to preview what books we're reading so that you guys can pick them up as well and join us. So we're going to go with a typical 2025 new release contemporary romance. We're going to be picking up Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez, her newest release. I am
Yes,
so
yes.
excited for this. And then following that, we're going to go with a fan favorite sci fi, some lesbian time travel. We are going to be going with This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El Motar. So if you guys are interested in any of these books and want to pick them up ahead of time, please do so you can join us for our spoilery review. Greta, where can people find you?
You can find me all over the internet at Greta's Favorite Things. I stream on Twitch right now. I am currently playing Super Mario 64, which is insane. And I'm awful at it, Millie. It is awful, but we're all having a very fun, kooky, crazy time. I stream Mondays and Wednesdays at 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. PST. I also have a YouTube channel where I'm uploading videos on there. So if you want to check me out, I'm literally Greta's Favorite Things all over the internet. Millie, where can people find you?
You guys can find me on my booktube channel, Into the Nook, where I post a bunch of reading vlogs and secret TBR videos. And you guys can find me on my Instagram at Into the Nook Realm.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.